I believe that Mumia Abu Jamal is joining us on the line. I'm almost without words, Mumia. Almost without words. I cannot tell you what a joy it is to hear your voice.
And it's a joy to hear yours. It has been many years.
Many, many years. And so I have to ask, because I'm sure people in our audience want to know, just on a purely human and personal level, how are you doing? How have you endured this for all of these many years?
Sometimes I ask myself that. But, of course, I'm strong. I'm well. I feel surrounded by a sea of love, and the struggle continues.
Well, it certainly does, and this year it has. We've seen the first of what I think of as a real spot of light in terms of the decision that the Supreme Court made. And so I want to start with a little bit of like 101, if you will, for people who are coming to this new, because I think a whole new generation is now becoming familiar with your case, of why you feel your case is important and connected to what has now become an international mass movement, to not just to abolish the death penalty, but now with Michelle Alexander kind of getting in on this to fight against the mass incarceration of black men.
I think there are a few reasons. Some are, of course, related to my case, but some are much broader than that. And I think that part of it is simply something called experience. And I say that to say that Angela Davis, in her first autobiography, If They Come in the Morning, wrote about how there was a struggle against what she called, and what many of her contemporaries, and I was one of her contemporaries, called fascism in the United States. We were complaining about the prison system back in the 1970s. Of course, we were talking about people like Huey Newton and Eldridge Cleaver and Angela Davis and George Jackson and other black revolutionaries. In point of fact, back in the early 1970s, if you looked across the whole country, you would probably find 250,000, maybe 310,000 people in prison, state and federal, all across the United States. Well, if you look around this country today, you will literally find millions of people in prison and jails, federal and state, many of them African Americans, many of them African American men, women, and juveniles. And she, somewhat recently, and in her recent book on prison
abolition. This call is from the State Correctional Institution at Green and is subject to monitoring and recording.
And in her recent book on prison abolition said it was unthinkable back in 1971. It was unimaginable to think that there would be millions of people in prison and there wouldn't be some kind of revolt, rebellion against this kind of situation. Well, I think we're seeing the beginning of that, at least intellectually and scholarly, through the work of Michelle Alexander. But most people know it through their family. They know about their son. They know about their husband. They know about their father. They know about their daughter, their uncles, their aunts, their family. And we are 6% of the world's population. But the prison population in the United States is 26% of the world's prison population. No other country in the world houses that percentage, or in the raw numbers. I mean, not even China, which has like 4 times our population. What does that tell you?
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question, because what I think it tells me is that at this point there are 2 trains running. One has to do with money in terms of running a for-profit prison industry, and the other has to do with something that I heard you describe in an interview as the prison industrial complex being kind of an answer to the problem of having too many poor, too many minority, too many essentially surplus people. What are your thoughts about this, the trend that we're headed in?
Well, I think you hit 2 good points, but let's go through Michelle Alexander if we can again, because she says something that, while I may have kind of hinted at it and written about it, I haven't mentioned it strongly or more forthrightly. She describes the black working class and poor people in America as a caste, C-A-S-T-E. C-A-S-T-E. And she says this happened in large part because the black bourgeoisie and the black middle class essentially told the political leadership, a la Clinton and all them, look, you protect affirmative action, and we don't care what you do with the rest of those people. Now think about how many people have talked about Michelle Alexander's book, how many people have read it. I think at least 100,000 by now. But people don't talk about that because that's too hot, you see. She does, of course, but I'm talking about reviewers. I haven't read a review that has touched on that. And I think that's a powerful point. That suggests that prisons have more to do with what you said, kind of an excess population, you see, and a way to also fund the prison industrial complex in terms of hundreds of thousands of jobs for people, you know, prison guards, and judges, and so forth. But it's even more insidious than that, because when you are, let's say, locked up in Philadelphia or in Harlem or in Roxbury in Boston, and you go way upstate to a rural prison, well, when the census is taken, you're counted as part of that rural population, and federal money that would have gone to your home neighborhood where your family and your loved ones and your parents or children are living, that money goes up to the rural districts, except you're not counted in terms of a vote because you cannot vote. So your ideas, your hopes, your fears are not taken into consideration. But your body is. You're counted as a resident of a distant rural county. So that does two things. It enriches the rural county with a false population count, and it also impoverishes the inner cities of Harlem, of North Philly, of Roxbury, because that federal money that would have gone for education or transportation or health care goes somewhere else. So that's, well.
The pain of this is tremendous in many of these ways, as you have mentioned. And here's another one that I'd like you to react to, if you would. We recently learned that the plan for how many prison spaces to build in Western PA is being predicated on the test scores of third-grade children in the Philadelphia public school system. And it seems to me that if there's any more of a clear kind of arrow pointing at what plans are for us, that's it.
Yeah, I heard you after. I didn't hear you after you said predicated. I'm sorry.
It's predicated upon the test scores of third-grade children in Philadelphia public schools.
Wow. Didn't hear that. Didn't know that. I'm a little surprised, but only a little surprised. But we really do live in a prison industrial complex. And think about this. Not only have kids been shortchanged in terms of their educational system from the elementary to the high school level. There are some cities like Baltimore with less than 50% graduating. I remember reading some statistic. It was like less than 70. More than 70% did not graduate from high schools in Baltimore. So you take money out of these schools, you barely educate or miseducate these kids, and then you build prisons in the western parts or the rural districts of these states. I mean, how insidious can you get?
As I say, the pain is just tremendous for our people, I think. I want to change direction, if you will, just for a minute. As someone who has been sitting in that prison for 30 years, could you tell us why the death penalty is a form of cruel and unusual punishment?
Well, there are many reasons. It is racist, but also it is legally built on a fallacy. That is to say, if a prosecutor announces he or she is going for a death penalty, something happens in that case that happens in no other case in American law, or really global law. They're able to select what is called a prosecution-prone jury. That is, a jury who, having heard not one word of legal fact, has decided before they are sworn in as jurors that they could return a death penalty. If someone has a question and says, well, maybe yes, maybe no, they're removed. If someone says, certainly, I don't believe in it, they're removed. And there have been several highly regarded legal studies and scholarly studies on this by sociologists and psychologists and whatnot. And they found that these jurors are far more prosecution-prone, far more willing to convict, and far less willing to give the legal entitlements to which an accused or a defendant is supposed to have. What that means is the prosecutor is able to get far more first-degree murder convictions and therefore able to, after that, turn around and go for a death penalty than they could have if they had a juror who is really a cross-representation of the community. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. And we have seen and talked, you can't hear us necessarily up there, but about that kind of injustice a lot on WURD. And we actually have Bill Anderson here with us, and I want to give him a minute to shout at you, if you will, but just wanted to sort of press a minute. And we very rarely hear live from death row about what it feels like to be facing the death penalty every day for 30 years. And if it isn't too painful for you, I hope that you could give our audience a little bit of an idea, just a glimmer of an idea.
Well, first of all, welcome, Bill. It's been many years, I think maybe 10 or 15 years since I talked to you.
I'm sorry, I didn't know the mic was on. It has been a minute. And I didn't come in to hijack the interview. People want to hear from you. I just wanted to say stay strong, man. God bless. We're always in support.
Thank you so much, brother. Well, it's like a little piece of hell. I mean, you're alone a lot. You're in a cell 22 hours out of a 24-hour day. And for many men, it's 24 hours and really weeks and months and years where they're literally in a cell by themselves, the size of the average bathroom. But, you know, it's kind of like what people used to say when Malcolm said he was in prison and they would get shot. And he said, don't be shocked because I said I'm in prison, because we all in prison. As long as you live south of the Canadian border, you're in prison. And I say that to say Oscar Grant wasn't on death row, or was he? Amadou Diallo wasn't on death row, or was he? We could really list Sean Bell from New York. We could list names for a half hour, 2 hours, 10 hours. And none of these people were on death row. They were theoretically free. They were walking the street. They thought they were American citizens entitled to all the rights and privileges to which the Constitution grants them. But they didn't have a right to drive while black, or to walk down the street while black, or answer their door while they're black. Oscar Grant didn't have the right to get off a subway in California, in Oakland, while he was black. They were on death row. They didn't know it. But guess what? They were on death row. And until we change this system, we're all on death row, believe it or not.
Mumia, you know this event is coming up on the 9th, and folk are gathering at no more ironic a forum than the National Constitution Center. As you look at that event and the people who are going to give voice to these issues, and the folk who are coming and those who are not, what do you want people to take from it? What's the takeaway?
Well, that people should always speak out against any injustice affecting anyone. Martin Luther King said an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. And it is ironic that it's the Constitution Center. Because, when it comes to the Constitution, all of us, not just myself, we get short shrift.
We have 60 seconds remaining.
We're the one people in this country who have never truly been given constitutional rights, despite what is written in the Constitution. It took them 100 years to decide, no matter what the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment said, that black people should vote. And we still look what happened in the year 2000. We still get denied the right to vote. So the Constitution is a beginning. It's a starting point, but it cannot be an end. We have to fight for all of our rights, all of our time, all of our lives.
Mumia, I know we've been given the 60-second warning, and so is there anything that you want to say that I haven't asked you about or that you think is important?
Well, I thank you for this opportunity and this brief time. It goes by so quickly. It is a pleasure, again, to hear your voice and to hear the voices of my brothers and sisters who are there, people who I love. It's on the move, longer, John Africa. I love you all.